So I'm going to be talking about fueling the body. And one of the trademarks that I had when I was here in the clinic was I always tried to have some little low protein treats for the patients who came in, especially the kids. And I can't take credit for baking the brownies today. Jessica did that, but I think they turned out really well. What do you think? Yeah, if you didn't know they were low protein, you probably would think they were just regular old brownies. So make sure everybody gets some of those. Okay, well, let me see. Where are we? Okay, so when we think about nutrition, we usually think about food, but we have to have a little bit of science behind that. And one of the things that we look at are the labs that are going on in the body. What's happening in there with all of the amino acids and the iron levels, vitamin D levels, liver enzymes, kidney function. Those are all important things, and we do track those. And it's a little bit small, but we keep track of those on a little spreadsheet for each of our patients. So I put a snippet of that out there. And this is from a patient who's been doing really well with their labs. So all their amino acids are pretty much within the normal limits that we're looking for. And then the other thing that we want to track is how they're growing. Have we been feeding them enough to promote gradual weight gain and height gain? So we want to track that every time they come in. And then we have our basic guidelines that we go with. Our CDC protocol for diet. If somebody has severe PA, then we follow these guidelines as far as how often to feed them. It's going to be about every 2 to 3 hours for young infants, and then that increases. But we don't want anybody to go more than 8 to 10 hours without eating because the body just isn't able to process the foods quite the same way when there's PA going on. So if they go for an extended period of time without eating, then their blood sugars can drop down and other important nutrients can drop down in their body. And so they don't have everything they need to keep functioning as well as what they should if they go too long without eating. So if you've brought in a young child and you said, "Oh, I'm so excited. He's 2 months old and he's sleeping through the night." And Dr. C says, "Oh, no, that's not good." That's why we need those babies to keep having food throughout the night. So sorry, mamas and papas, you do need to get up and feed those babies often. But as they get older, they can go about 8 to 10 hours. And then we come up with a sick day recipe just in case we have an illness so that we're prepared for that to happen. And hopefully we don't have to use that very often. And the same thing for the mild PA. We have our protocol for that. And it's very similar in that we don't want them going very long without food. And then the same fasting can be a little bit longer as they get older. It can be 10 to 12 hours. Whenever any of our PA patients have an illness, we don't want them to be fasting very long. So fasting means going without food or drink that provides calories. So if somebody is ill, you may need to try to get some 7-Up, some Sprite, something into them just to give them a little calories. Don't give them diet 7-Up or diet pop because there's no calories in that. So make sure you have a little bit of regular stuff around to give them. Fruit juice works well too, but sometimes you need something a little bit of bubbly to help settle a queasy tummy. I put in a picture of some of the formulas because we have used formulas with our patients. We don't often use a lot of formulas with our PA patients, but we do usually use some, especially for the infants. And then as they get older, we can usually wean down the amount. Some of the kids have been able to go off of formulas altogether. But these are two of the main ones that we're using at this point. The Animix, which is made by Nutrition. You have had the rep out there today. And then the other one that we've used in the past for some of the school age kids would be the PA Cooler. So that's another option that it's a ready to drink product. So all you have to do is unscrew the lid and it's ready to go. Sometimes we can't get enough protein into the diet with PA, that we only want to have so much of the protein coming from what we call intact foods. So that's the breads and cereals and all of those things that have the protein in it contributes to the diet. And if the child is growing quickly and we need to get more protein in, we may have to use the medical protein that doesn't have all the amino acids that can get them into trouble. So some of the pros and cons of using medical formula. The pros: it provides protein without the offending amino acids, and that's valine, methionine, isoleucine, threonine. Those are ones that we don't want them to have. It's a good source of calories, good source of vitamins and minerals. And then patients with difficult to control PA sometimes just need that little boost from the medical formula as well as medical foods. And I'll talk about the foods in a little bit. Some of the cons, reason we wouldn't want to: there have been a few studies that show that kids who have used a lot of medical formula have not grown as much as what we expected them to. So when we plot them out on the growth grid, they would be falling down maybe in the 10 to 25% range instead of hitting the 50 percentile. And then sometimes we just need to monitor their caloric intake to prevent the risk of obesity. So even though it's a good source of calories, we don't want too much going in. So if they have too many calories, then it's just like the rest of us. You get too many calories and you get too much stuff around the middle, and that makes it harder for the heart. So we want to be careful with that. We don't want to set them up for obesity as a youngster. So the main fuel for the body comes from our real food, and we use that for a heart-healthy diet. We want to avoid fasting when ill. We need additional calories from sweets and fat. It needs to be low protein. So we focus on the fruits, the vegetables, and starches. And then sometimes we need to add some supplemental vitamins and minerals. So the picture here has lots of things on there. And one thing that you probably don't see in this picture is meat and cheese and eggs, all those animal sources of protein. But you do see other things that have protein. You probably see some beans on there, rice, and then not so many starchy vegetables. It was hard to find a picture that had everything in it that I needed, but the starchy vegetables like peas, corn, potatoes, those would also be a big part of the diet. Generally, the more color we have in anybody's diet, so if we have PA or we don't have PA, we still need all those colorful fruits and vegetables to be in the diet. So all you parents out there, you need to be setting a great example for your kids, and you need to be eating lots of vegetables and fruit so that they get the idea that, oh yeah, mom and dad eat this too, so it's okay for me. Again, we get most of our protein from the grains and the legumes are now being called pulses. When I first heard that, I thought, gosh, that's an odd word for that, but that's the new term for legumes and beans and things. We want to avoid the animal protein, especially meat and meat products. So things like a piece of roast beef, a hamburger patty, chicken, bologna, all of those things are basically animal protein, and we need to be really careful with PA because that has too many of the offending amino acids in it that gets them into trouble. And it's better for these kids that need to be on a low protein diet to not get the flavor in their system that, oh yeah, bacon really tastes good, or gosh, I love the flavor of a grilled hamburger. So it's really not doing them any favors by introducing those to the kids. So just keep that in mind, that if it's something that's not going to be a long-term part of their diet, it's not really fair to give them samples of those just so they can taste it, because then that makes it harder to avoid. Fried foods, that's another one that we need to stay away from. So even though there may be some of those vegetables that are good sources for them to be eating, if you dip them in a little batter and throw them in the French fry grease, or just like potatoes. French fries a nice treat, but it shouldn't be an everyday part of anybody's diet. We want to be careful of the heart, so be careful of the fat. And then seasoning foods with spices and herbs. That can be a great way for all of us to get used to eating things because, again, we all need to be following a heart-healthy diet, but especially for these folks with PA, being careful with the sodium intake. So using a little bit of Mrs. Dash or some other spice blends. What is it, Happy Salt or something? Isn't that one of the ones that's pretty popular as a substitute for salt? And then by keeping away from so many of the processed foods, then you'll be having less sodium that way too. Low-fat cooking methods, so baking, broiling, throwing something on the grill, those are all great ways to cook. When you do the things on the grill, then you get extra flavors added to it, so you don't need to worry about adding the salt and the different spices to it. It just tastes better naturally. If you're doing roasting vegetables, that can be a really nice way to get different flavors in your vegetables. So chunk them up, put them on a big baking sheet. I like to spray it with a little bit of Pam or some other no-stick spray so you don't get a lot of extra fat on there. Throw it in a real hot oven for about 15, 20 minutes, and you'd be surprised at how much better things like carrots can taste. And put a little bit of onion with it, maybe a little bit of mushroom. So I know this isn't right after lunchtime, so hopefully you're getting a little bit hungry thinking about all of this. But just do a lot of flavor mixes to make it a lot more fun for everybody. And those should all be foods that you can include for everyone in the family, not just making a special little bit for Johnny because he has PA or Susie. So make sure that everybody gets to enjoy all these great flavors. So why do we need that heart healthy diet? You've probably heard a lot of the speakers today talking about heart transplants and liver transplants, and I missed one of the speakers that was speaking on the cardiac system, but you've probably got the idea by now that if we don't take good care of the heart for these folks who have PA, that it's easy for them to get in trouble. So that's why we need that heart healthy diet. And again, this picture focuses a lot on the fruits, the vegetables, the grains. Those are the best parts of the diet. And just coming up with fun ways. So maybe it's getting into cold weather season, so it's a big pot of vegetable soup. It could be a casserole dish that mainly focuses on vegetables. And those are ways that we can make that all heart healthier. Be careful how many cans of Campbell soup that you end up dumping in there, because those soup concentrates, while they do give a creamy base to everything, they're really just a lot of sodium in there, and that's not so good. So be careful on those mixtures. Well, going back to planning out how much somebody should eat, we have to start somewhere. And that's when you come into the clinic, you get weighed and we check your height. And then I take that weight number and I plug it into my little chart to see what we need to do for the amount of protein and the other nutrients in the diet. And then when I go into the room, I usually do a diet history, and I'm sure Marissa and our new dietitian, Laura, will be doing the same thing, that they find out what's typical for your family to be eating. If I'm thinking that you're eating blah, 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 but you're really eating something totally different, I need to know that so that I can tell you, oh, this would be a good way to include the foods that you really love. And maybe this would be a way that you could prepare them just a little bit differently to make them more heart healthy. So that's why we do that diet history. So when it gets all down to it, the prescription is going to include how much protein to eat, how many calories we think you need. And that's a hard one to expect anyone to come up with a solid number at home with. But if you can follow the protein needs and then once in a while check the weight, and if a child is growing, then you know you've been giving them enough calories. And if they haven't been growing, then maybe we need to look at getting more calories into them. And then the other part of the diet prescription is fluid, because we all need water. And that's something that we tend to forget about sometimes, is getting enough fluids. It's easier in the summertime when we're hot and we're sweaty and we just have that natural thirst to drink. But this time of year, when it's not quite so warm, we sometimes need to remind ourselves to get those fluids, because they're so important for keeping the body healthy. And then I have the little picture of the square peg in the square hole, because it's the same way with diet. We can't shove a square peg into a round hole and expect it to fit. If the diet doesn't work for a person, then we can't expect them to keep following that long term. So we need to make everything fit together for the family and the patient so that they're more likely to follow it. Okay, well, back to calculating that diet. We have to get those numbers from somewhere. And we've had some great organizations over the years and wonderful people who have sat down and figured out how many grams of protein are needed for every kilogram of weight. And we have little graphs there to tell us how much should be given at each age range. And that's the same thing for calories and fluid. We have numbers to go by. So we're not just pulling it out of our hat and saying, oh gosh, today I think we need to go one gram of protein per kilogram. We have some science to back that up. So what I pulled out to go through for the rest of the presentation here is based on a typical 13-year-old male that we had in the clinic. And he weighed 44.5 kilograms that day. So that's 44.5 times 2.2. So he's somewhere around 95 pounds, just to give you a better idea there. And what we ended up giving him was a little over 1 gram of protein per kilogram. So that worked out to 48 grams for the whole day. And for most of us, if we stuck to around 1 gram of protein per kilogram, that would be pretty decent amount of protein. But he's going to be getting his protein from the grains and breads and starchy things versus having eggs and hamburger patties and chicken breast and things. And then fluid needs about 31 ounces of water, and that's water. In addition to that, he's going to be getting fluids in the fruits and vegetables that he's eating too. Calories, that worked out. For a 13-year-old, they're pretty busy little bodies. So we wanted to go somewhere around 60 grams per kilogram. So that gave me a ballpark of somewhere around 2,600 calories for the whole day. And then the other thing that we usually calculate is how much carnitine to give them. And that's based on their weight. And I didn't include that in this slide. Well, now that you've been told 48 grams of protein, you have to figure out, how's that translate into meals? So what I did was divided that out. So for breakfast, lunch, and supper, about 12 grams each. And then because we don't want them going too long without eating, we have snacks in there. So 2 snacks with 6 grams each. And then his breakfast, the fuel that he's going to be putting in to get his day started. It could be cereal. That's quick and easy to do in the morning. A cup and a half of Cheerios is going to mean 5 grams of protein are used. And Cheerios is one of the higher protein cereals. It's also one of the better nutrition ones, so that's why I wanted to use that one. But if somebody were really hungry, we could go with some of the lower protein cereals, so something like Fruit Loops or Rice Krispies. So you wouldn't get quite the same nutrition value, but you could get a larger bowl of cereal with those. And then you need something to make that wet. So if they're not using a medical formula, then almond milk is a good choice to go with. And a cup of almond milk is only 1 gram of protein. If we were thinking about cow's milk, that would be 8 grams of protein in 1 cup of cow's milk. So it's a lot better to use the substitute milks for these kids. But don't use soy milk, because that one's going to be almost as high in protein as what cow's milk is. A lot of folks are making their own bread. And what I've noticed over the years is it tends to be more of a whole wheat bread. So 2 slices of whole wheat toast would be about 6 grams of protein. And that's all subject to that slice of bread not being cut real thick. So if it's a real thick slice of bread that you're cutting, it may only be 1 slice or 1.5. And then some fruit, because Cheerios taste a whole lot better with some banana or berries or something on it. So a cup of fruit, and that's no protein. And that adds up to about 12 grams for the day. Or for the meal, sorry. Okay. Time to send the child off for school. So we need to send lunch. So just for some variety, I put white bread in here so you could see the difference in the protein. So 2 slices of white bread is only 4 grams of protein. We're going to put some peanut butter on there, and 2 tablespoons sounds like a lot, but we're talking measuring tablespoons with a level fill on that. So 2 tablespoons is just a light skim across a piece of bread. And then marshmallow fluff, or you could mix the peanut butter and marshmallow fluff in equal volume, and you'd be putting a 1/4 cup of that on the sandwich. The marshmallow fluff just has a lot of calories and sugar in it, so 0 grams of protein counted for that. Some fruit, because that's easy to tuck in a lunch that you're sending off. Some raw vegetables and a little bit of ranch dip. And if you limit that ranch dip to about 2 tablespoons, it's going to be another free item. So altogether, between the bread and the peanut butter, we've spent 12 grams on that. After school time, boy, they've been out playing at recess and everything. They're coming home. They're going to get ready to do some chores. So then we need a good hearty snack after school. So maybe a bowl of vegetable soup. No meat in the vegetable soup, just vegetables. And a cup of that is about 3 grams of protein. Some crackers to go with it. So 10 Ritz crackers would be 2 grams. And then another cup of almond milk. And the reason we're pushing almond milk is for the calcium, because our PA patients tend to have difficulty with bone strength and bone building. So we want to make sure we're getting that calcium fortified milk in there. So that one adds up to 6 grams. Supper. So for this supper, we're going to do a cup of potatoes, which would be a lot for a little kid, but a 13-year-old can easily pack in a cup of potatoes, and that's going to be 4 grams of protein. A little bit of that cream of mushroom soup, and a 1/4 cup of the concentrate is only 1 gram of protein. And then 2 cups of milk, because I was shooting for 4 cups for the whole day. So that gives me another 2 grams. Corn, that's a very popular vegetable. Everybody seems to like it. So the 1/2 cup on that is 2 grams. Then we need to fill up the belly with a little bit of stuff. So a cup of lettuce is 0 grams. If you wanted to have 2 cups, that's fine. It's still 0 grams. A little bit of ranch dressing. And then we'll finish it up with dessert. And the Hunt's pudding cups are really nice. Those have 0 grams of protein in them. And pretty much every flavor but chocolate is going to be 0 grams of protein on those little Hunt's pudding cups. So those are fun to stick in a lunch as well. Since we don't want fasting to go too long, make sure there's a bedtime snack. And so what I had down was 4 cups of popcorn would be 4 grams of protein, so roughly 1 gram per cup. 4 cups sounds like a lot, but when you think about a cottage cheese container, it's about 32 ounces. That's 4 cups. That's not a huge amount of popcorn, but that would be 4 grams. And then 2 sheets of graham crackers. So the ones that have the 4 little bars in them, each of those sheets would be 1 gram of protein. So that gives us a total of 6 grams for that snack. And then you need something to wash it down. So maybe some apple juice there. So that's added up to our 48 grams of protein for the whole day. And I think most 13-year-olds should be happy with that. But if there's still room in their tummy for a little bit of calories, then that's when you can fill in with some other things. So maybe some fruit sorbets, Those are just basically a pureed fruit that's been frozen. Syrup, so maybe they needed to add a little bit of maple syrup or some pancake syrup or something to an item. Hard candy is another option. And then you get into your fats. So we want to be gentle with those because of the heart indications, but fats can be something that can add a lot of calories in a small package. Typically, the regular fat items like a regular salad dressing, regular sour cream, cream cheese, those are going to be lower in protein, but higher in fat and calories. The lower ones, the fat-free, are going to be higher in protein for the most part. Fat-free sour cream has 3 times as much protein in it as what the full-fat sour cream has, but then you don't have any of the fat to have to worry about. So it's a matter of balancing everything. Sometimes the best option is to go with the middle of the road with the reduced fat options because they're going to have a little bit less protein in them and a little bit less fat. So that might be your best option to go with for those added fat items. Little bit of information about medical food. Medical food would be things like low protein brownies. And we had to use a mix to make those. So we used a mix that was mostly wheat starch that made that item. The wheat starch has had all the protein taken out of it, and that includes the gluten. So sometimes these items are a little bit trickier to bake because they don't rise the same way that regular items do. The gluten is what makes bread stretchy. So when you make bread at home and you're kneading it, what you're doing is trying to make more gluten and build that up so that it stretches and makes a nice fluffy dinner roll or a nice soft loaf of bread. But when you take that out to make it a low protein item, then you have to be really careful because it's going to be a lot flatter and denser. Let's see. Corn starch is another one that you can use, but it's not really good for baking like the wheat starch is, but it is good for thickening anything. So if you needed to thicken a gravy or something at home, use corn starch because it won't have the protein in it. Avoid using regular wheat flour because that's going to have the protein. Another benefit of using the medical foods, they give more calories. So if you have somebody who's very active and they need more calories to promote growth, you might need to use some of those protein-free pastas and cereals and rice products to help give them more calories. And then convenience. And if you go out and look at some of the Cambrook products, they do have a lot of mixes and things, but they also have a lot of ready-to-eat products too. So those are options like the tortillas we use today. Those were ones that we just got in as tortillas. Nobody had to do anything to them except cut them up and serve them. They did spray a little bit of oil on them and bake them, but they didn't have to roll out the tortilla and do all that work to it. So there's some nice convenience items there. And this slide shows some of the products that they do have available from Cambrook. So you have your basic baking mixes. They have some frozen products like a little fake chicken nugget. And then they have some of the mixes that we've used. We used the beef patty mix today to make the taco blend for the PA diet. And they have a new one. I haven't tried it yet. It's the seafood. I don't know what that one tastes like, but I do know that the chicken one kind of tastes like stovetop stuffing. It's pretty good. Some of the families over the years have made those into patties and cooked them a little bit in a skillet at home in the house and then taken them out to the grill. So they probably get a little bit of the meat juices and the flavor from that, but it makes them taste a whole lot better. Plus they hold up better when you put them on that way. I can't imagine trying to put the raw Cambrook meat patty mix onto a grill. I think that'd probably make a terrible mess and fall down inside. But if you cook it a little bit first, then it works well. We do for that. All right. Okay, supplements. So a lot of our families like to use a variety of supplements, herbal products for your everyday ailments and for the prevention of seasonal illnesses. The supplements that I'm going to address this afternoon are not in that category. These are ones that have been associated with some benefits for PA. Carnitine is one that we highly recommend. It has a lot of benefits for the PA group. And we base the amount on the weight and then divide the doses. Don't take it all at once. It's not something that is going to be able to release in your body over the course of a day. So you need to take that in divided doses. And what that does is it aids in the transfer of the long chain fatty acids into the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is the cells in our body that produce energy. So by taking the carnitine, that helps your body have a little bit more energy. It also binds to the acyl residuals to aid in the elimination of abnormal organic acids. So we don't want those abnormal organic acids building up. So this helps get those out of your body. And one of the cons to this one is that sometimes with some people, it does cause some unpleasant body odors. Sometimes it's been described as kind of a fishy odor or maybe a dirty foot odor. But compared to all the benefits that you get from it, it's really worth taking it. The next one up is citric acid. And we've had a few people on that one. Is it more than just the one family, Dr. Z? Or is it? Yeah. So we've been using that. And the study that was done on that one showed some benefits initially, but one of the long-term benefits was that a decrease in hospitalizations after 2 years of use. So you may not see a rapid change with that one, but stick with it. It's been known to help with that. And what it does is it increases some of those Krebs cycle intermediates. And Krebs cycle is the energy cycle. So that's where you have to have all those little cogs go into place to end up creating energy. And it helps with little bits and pieces on that one. It normalizes the relationship between ammonia and glutamate levels. So we don't want too much ammonia or glutamate or too much ammonia in the body. That's not healthy for us. So by using the citric acid, it helps reduce that. And that's the main points on that one. Biotin. This one's an optional one. When I was looking through the literature, it seemed like there were more studies promoting the use of biotin in the 70s and 80s, which for me, that seems like just yesterday, but it's before a lot of you were born. So not much information lately on that one. So it's kind of a weak use support on that one. CoQ10. Several studies out there on this one. It's a coenzyme that helps promote the transfer of electrons. So again, that Krebs cycle where we're making the energy. And then it spares the cell membrane from lipid peroxidation and oxidative stress. So with any of us, for lowering the risk of heart disease, we don't want to have high oxidation. So this might have some benefits for that. The results weren't real conclusive, but there's some potential there. Let's see, reduce CQ10 levels and enlarged mitochondria were seen in the myocardial biopsy of a patient with PA and severe dilated cardiomyopathy. So again, looking back at some of the post-mortem studies that there may have been some benefits there. And CQ10 supplementation, 1.5 to 25 milligrams per kilogram per day was helpful. And that was in the study that was not on PA patients. And the authors couldn't confirm whether that high dose of CoQ10 would actually help with myocardial levels for PA patients. So I'll leave that up to some of the doctors to let you know on that one. One that I do highly recommend is just a general multivitamin. Make sure it has D3. D3 is the sunshine vitamin, so summertime, you usually get quite a bit of that. But then we're going into fall, our days are getting shorter. It's less than 12 hours of sunshine, so make sure that you're using some D3. Iron, and the main source of iron in the diet is meat. And if you're not eating meat, then you need to get it somewhere. So using an iron supplement in the form of a multivitamin is good. And calcium. So if you're not a big almond milk drinker or milk substitute drinkers, make sure you're getting enough calcium to meet your needs. And that's going to be about 1,000 milligrams a day for kids. And then vitamin D3, that one was 15 of the micrograms per day on that. And it's around 8 to 10 on iron. If you're using a calcium supplement, calcium citrate is absorbed better. So make sure you're doing Caltrate or some other generic version of Caltrate. Sometimes these supplements have vitamin D, they have magnesium with them. So if you're getting vitamin D in your calcium supplement, you probably don't need an additional vitamin D. One drawback on calcium is the tablets tend to be big. So you may need to use a chewable form for children, or if they're a little bit older, they may be able to tolerate the petite version. And I don't recommend gummy vitamins at all. So gummy calcium would be another one that it gets the job done on calcium, but I don't really recommend it. It tends to stick in the teeth. And especially if this is something that you're giving to children at bedtime, then they're going to bed with that gummy stuff stuck in their teeth, and they're more likely to get cavities. Vitamin D, it's fat soluble. So we want to make sure that you're not overdosing on it, because it's one that isn't going to pass through the body if you take too much. So it will build up. So make sure that you're going, oh, I was wrong. It was 10 micrograms for kids on that one. But you don't want to get calcium in your multivitamin, then in calcium in your or vitamin D in your calcium supplement. It can all add up. And that's one reason we want to check that on an annual basis when you come in for your nutrition labs. All right, you're at the point you wanted to be, the end of the day here. So the conclusions for PA, limit the protein, reduce the fat by avoiding animal foods such as meat. Some diets can include some dairy and eggs. So if it's a vegetarian diet, we can usually work in a few servings of eggs or dairy during the week. But in general, we want to stay away from those because they are higher in fat and it's easier to overdo it. Choose the protein from beans, nuts, seeds, grains, starchy vegetables. Include a lot of color. So those fruits and vegetables, at least 5 servings a day. A serving is about the size of the palm of the hand. So if you have a little 3-year-old, their palm is pretty small. But if you have an 18-year-old, their palm is pretty big. So use that for your guideline for 5 servings a day on fruits and vegetables. And then if weight gain just isn't happening, we may need to have you use some medical foods. So the low protein, starchy products in particular. Okay. Take supplements such as L-carnitine as directed. Get a good quality multivitamin daily. Take calcium. Take vitamin D if you're not getting it in other sources. And then the bottom line, enjoy your food, because it's something that we all take a lot of pleasure in eating. And if you have to be on a very special diet, like a low protein diet, you just have to have some ways to still be able to enjoy your food. So preparation techniques, having the same foods for the whole family, maybe mom, dad, and the other siblings that aren't PA get some added chicken or something with their meal, but just make sure that everybody's partaking in a lot of the same foods during the day, and that'll make your whole family healthier. And I'll take time for a couple of questions if anybody has. anything. You all want to get out of here. Oh, yeah, Matt. Yes, the air fryer. Air fryer would be a much better option to go with. Yeah. And if you needed to spray a little bit of Pam or something on that to help crisp up the edges, that's going to be a lot better than dunking it in the deep fat fryer. Oh, the different vegetable oils. Yeah. They're going to be a little bit more heart healthy, but you still need to be careful of the volume. So small amounts of those would be okay, but you wouldn't want to be using those for having fried foods or putting large amounts on anything. Okay. Good enough. Thank you, everybody.